14 months ago, we were all together at Springfield Armory for the 2019 GCA annual members meeting. But that was last year, and things are different now. If there's one thing that 2020 has taught us, it's how to improvise. So here we are, in the middle of the COVID-19 global pandemic, living under circumstances that prevent us from coming together like we did last year at Springfield. Those same circumstances forced the GCA board to cancel the 2020 annual members meeting, which was to be held here at CMP South in Oxford near Anniston, Alabama. Although we can't get together this year, the GCA's board of directors wants to show you that we're still here and we're still working hard to make your membership worthwhile. Toward that end, and in the spirit of improvisation, we'd like to give you something that would surely have been a highlight of the 2020 annual members meeting, a tour of CMP South. Although we have to do it virtually, we're going to do it nevertheless. So let's have a look around. The CMP operates out of a complex of buildings located 3 miles southeast of the Calhoun County Courthouse in downtown Anniston. The building here on Coleman Road has some interesting things going on inside it. The custom shop, the auction operation, rifle storage, unpacking, degreasing, they're all inside this building. But in addition to that, there are some things going on in here that you're gonna have to see to believe. So we're gonna go inside and check it out. This part of the building is where the auction operation is housed. You can see they have racks of rifles, like right here on the end. Couldn't help but notice this M1C right there. And then if you look in the vault in the background, barrel receivers and also just receivers by themselves. And it's only through auction that you can purchase an M1 receiver, the receiver only. Right when we walked in, they had this receiver up to be photographed. And at first glance, it looks like any old M1 rifle receiver, but when you examine it a little more closely, the heel marks tell an interesting story. And that is, this receiver belonged to Winchester's educational contract. So when the Winchester Repeating Arms Company was given a contract to produce the M1 rifle, there was at first a test to determine whether or not the company could actually make the gun. And it was for 500 examples. This receiver comes from that serial number block. So that makes this a pretty exceptional piece of history, just like everything else in here. This place is too much. It's sensory overload. Everywhere I look, there's something fascinating. Like, there's something you didn't expect to see at the CMP. Ruger 1022s, there's about 6 of them. And they're soon to be up at auction. So you get some oddities, but then you get something that you expect. I know, it's not really inspiring to just see a big hunk of what looks like tinfoil, but all of this preservative packaging is around a completely unissued Springfield M1 rifle. If you're buying from the CMP, you're a history lover. And if you're a history lover, these things evoke a sense of history better than anything else. And I can't think of an M1 rifle that is more evocative to a collector than one that's never even been issued. This space might be the most important operation in the entire program, because this is where the parts all live. And you're seeing parts that have been refinished, parts that are in their original finish. They're segregated by maker, by quality. They have to screen them for overall quality to determine whether or not these parts are serviceable. So to come here is not just to have a conversation with the history of the M1 rifle and the history of the American military. It's to have a meditation on the really remarkable legacy that was created by the M1 rifle. This is the armory where the CMP assembles the M1 rifles that are available for sale through the store or purchased via mail order. And as you can see, it's a hive of activity with armorers hard at work. And right now they're working on the Philippine return M1s. If you remember our previous video on that topic, you'll remember that those rifles came back to the United States in a wretched condition. So bad, in fact, that as much as 75% of the barrels of those rifles were unusable. That was because of the combination of corrosive ammunition and improper storage. And that's why many of the rifles that are being worked on here today are rifles that are going to have replacement criterion barrels. Nevertheless, you've got in this space a little bit of a throwback to a bygone era where it's all on-the-job training, all done by hand, all analog work. I mean, this looks a lot like an assembly operation would have looked like 75 years ago at Winchester or Springfield right at the end of the Second World War. And a great thing about purchasing an M1 from the CMP is that you know for a fact you're going to get a usable, serviceable rifle that was assembled by one of these armorers. And these are the greatest living M1 armorers. Nobody has experience that can compare to what these guys are doing here on a daily basis. So when you purchase an M1 from the CMP, you're definitely going to get the best possible combination of quality and cost. So you've seen the auction room. But there's an interesting connectivity between what goes on here and the auction room, in that sometimes here they find things that are inherently interesting and valuable that would be appropriate for auction. And that's what's in this room. I've got a soft spot for 1917s, and just look at all of these lined up here. Oh brother, what do we have? Beautiful Eddystone with a Winchester March of 1919 barrel. Muzzle reading, 0+. Throat reading, 0. Who could have ever guessed that here we would be 100 years later, and you have a 1917 rifle that was produced in the immediate aftermath of the First World War, and that rifle is still here today, 100 years later, looking sharp. Check this thing out. It's a Remington 03A3, but the cool thing about it is that Smith Corona in 1942 overran its designated serial number block by about 5,000 rifles and overlapped with Remington serial numbers for the Remington produced 03A3s. And so this is a Remington 03A3 from that overlapping serial number range, and it is 100% as built and in exceptional condition. You can see exactly what goes on here, and that is when they find a rifle like this, that goes on the blue tag. Hold for auction. When you think of the CMP, you typically think of one thing first and foremost, and that's the M1 rifle. The CMP continues to be the leading source for the M1 rifle. However, during the last few years, they've sold something newer and even more exciting, and that's the M1911 pistol. And they're all right in there. In 2015, U.S. Congressman Mike Rogers, representing Alabama's 3rd Congressional District, proposed an amendment to authorize the U.S. Army to turn over surplus 1911 pistols to the CMP for sale to qualified buyers. Representative Rogers proposed the measure as a means of eliminating unnecessary storage costs while simultaneously promoting marksmanship activity and serving the interests of law-abiding collectors. The Defense Authorization Act of 2017 established a pilot program for selling the guns through the CMP, which then led to the first round of sales starting in late 2018. If you didn't submit an order packet for the first round of 1911 sales, have no fear. The CMP is currently accepting order packets for the second round of 1911s, and it will continue doing so until the end of business on March 4th, 2021. Here's the good news. Even though CMP rifle sales are a totally separate program, the GCA is nevertheless an acceptable CMP-affiliated organization for the pistol program as well. So your GCA membership can be used to qualify you to purchase a 1911 from the second round of sales. More information about this can be found on the CMP's website. One of the coolest parts of the building on Coleman Avenue is that you've got this area where the CMP is displaying some of the more interesting items that it's pulled out of crates over time. So on a regular basis, the CMP receives these crates from the Army. They begin pulling rifles out of them, and they get sometimes exactly what they expect, but sometimes they get surprises. And as the years have gone by, they've also accumulated a collection of rifles in surprisingly good condition. Like here, examples of World War II M1s, to also include an M1903A4 sniper rifle. Speaking of sniper rifles, here they have examples that they've pulled out of crates of U.S. sniper rifles, M1903A4 with the Weaver 330 scope, an M1D with an M84 scope, an M1903A4 with an M84 scope, and then check this one out, a very nice example of an M1C. But in addition to pulling out great examples of the 03 rifle, the M1, World War II M1s, here examples of post-World War II M1 rifles from all of the manufacturers. So we have Springfield, Winchester represented, in addition to International Harvester and Harrington and Richardson. So the entire American M1 rifle lineage is represented here. And what you're seeing are the prime examples that they've popped out of crates. But when they're unpacking these crates from time to time, they pull out surprises. And they've got a couple of examples over here that I find a little difficult to explain. Like, how is it that the Department of the Army had in storage a crate that included a 1952 dated Soviet SKS rifle? I can only guess that this thing got picked up on a battlefield, maybe in Vietnam, and made its way back. And the Army has had it in storage until it's sent it over here to the civilian marksmanship program. Now, these foreign weapons, they're not available for sale to the general public. They're displayed here simply as conversation pieces because it's unusual for the civilian marksmanship program to unpack a crate that would have something like this in it. It just looks like it's an M1 rifle, but this is a Beretta M1 that was manufactured in 1957. The Italians made use of M1 rifles that were given to them by the US government and sold to them by the US government. Then the Italians copied the M1 and ultimately modified it into the BM59 series of rifles. But before they began the BM59, they were just manufacturing rifles like this one. This one was made at Rome in '57, and all it is a stock 30 caliber M1 rifle, only with an Italian accent. You get other oddities like what might take the cake for the day. This beast, a model 1881 Swiss Vetterli rifle, chambered for the 10.4 by 38 millimeter rimmed rimfire cartridge. And if you're into Swiss Vetterlis, as you should be, this is an extremely nice example of a Swiss Vetterli where everything is completely intact, including the sight, including the 12-shot tubular magazine, and I can't figure out how in the world a beautiful example of the 1881 Swiss Vetterli made it to the civilian marksmanship program, but I suppose I should quit asking questions and just appreciate it for what it is. So, as the years have gone by, the CMP has accumulated this nice little section that they're preserving almost like a museum, and it gives you a little bit of an indication of the variety of firearms that have come to this program over the course of the years. When you purchase a rifle from the civilian marksmanship program, there's paperwork involved. And it's not really as big a deal as it sounds like it is. You have to fill out some forms, like a purchaser identification form. It's no big deal. It's all more about signatures than anything. You have to fill out this certification where you're certifying that you're eligible to own a firearm. You have an application checklist where they're checking to make sure that you're actually a citizen of the United States. In other words, making sure that you're eligible to complete a purchase. A checklist area for proof of participation in a marksmanship activity, which is something that you have to prove to be eligible to make a purchase here. And then a section for your NICS check, your National Instant Criminal Background Check System. With all that filled out, then there's this purchaser ship-to information form. And that's important even if you're purchasing a rifle in person at one of the CMP stores, because you have the option of taking it home with you once you've completed the purchase, but you can also have it shipped home to you, so that if you're like in town on business and you flew up and you don't want to fly home with the rifle, you pick your rifle out here, you fill the form out, and it's sent to you at home. Once you have all of this in order, and you provide proof of your membership in an affiliated organization like the Garand Collectors Association, you're all done and you are good to go. And once you've registered to be an eligible CMP purchaser, as long as you maintain your membership in an affiliate organization like the GCA, you can make purchases for years into the future. When the CMP ships an M1 rifle, they ship them in these nice cases, these hard cases that are specifically made for the M1. As you can see, it's contoured on the interior just to accommodate an M1 rifle. And somebody out there is getting a Springfield surface grade. This one is 0+ and 1+. It's got the hackberry wood stock. You can see she's checking it off against the order form. Everything's there. Then, in the case, you get owner's manual, instruction manual. You get one clip, and that fits right there in the case. These are awesome cases that are also ATA flight rated, so that with TSA locks, you can take this on an airline if you had to. TSA locks will go right there and right there. And then once the rifle's packed up, checked against the paperwork, it's time for it to go into the shipping box and go out the door. So these are the people here that are sending your rifles to you. Now for the best part of any visit to the CMP. It's time to do some shopping. When you purchase a rifle from the CMP, it's not nearly as complicated as it sounds. And when you do it in person here at the CMP South store, it's guided by 4 simple steps. And step number 1 is the best step of all. You have to pick out your rifle. I think we have a winner. I think I have chosen my purchase for the day, and I think it's this one. This is a field grade Springfield February '62 barrel that's mic'd out as 1+ and 3+. And the cool part is it's got a JLG stock. That's a post-war stock, but still it's a desirable stock. And it's got GI wood, and that's, to me, one of the more attractive aspects of it. But the most attractive aspect of this is that price. And you can't beat a functioning M1 rifle in great condition for $650. This is gonna be my new shooter. So this happens every single time I come here. I walk up to the counter, confident that this is the rifle to purchase, having selected my M1, and no sooner had I put it down here than these 2 M1s show up, both of which have Marine Corps tags. They're rebuilds with decent barrels, but they've got these Marine Corps tags so that we know the rifles were in Marine Corps inventory. And so now it's down to which one of these 3 am I gonna pick? And this is the point where step 1, which is supposed to be the easy step, gets a little challenging. Oh gosh, that's nice. Marine Corps M1, $750. I'm sort of feeling this rifle. After having changed my mind 3 times, I've finally selected a rifle, and it's a Springfield service grade, but the cool part is that it has a Marine Corps inventory tag from November 1965. That's cool. Know for a fact that this thing was in Marine Corps inventory. I have also filled out my paperwork, so I'm gonna take the rifle and the paperwork, I'm gonna hand it across the desk to them, and they're gonna begin processing the order. Once they're done with that, we move on to phase 3.
Alrighty, if you'll just verify that serial number for me.
Sure. 1139710. All done. The facilities here at Talladega are extensive. They have 9 ranges and they can accommodate any shooting sport except archery. The flagship of it all, though, is this, the John C. Garand range. This is a 600-yard range with 54 shooting positions and digital targeting, and this is one of the nicest ranges I've ever seen. The moment of truth now with my Marine Corps M1 that I just bought yesterday at the CMP South store. I've been doing this for a long time, and it never gets old. There's a mystique to the M1 rifle that once you're infected with it, you never get over it. Nothing wrong with that. I think I found my new shooter. And that's all rifle doing that work. That's not shooter. Not with these old worn out eyes. And that right there, that testifies to the perfection that John Garand created 80 years ago. As you have now seen, the CMP South in Anniston and the CMP Marksmanship Park here in Talladega are special places. They're run by great people who take their mission seriously. And that mission is promoting marksmanship and firearm safety. Since so much of what they do directly relates to the M1 rifle, the GCA is pleased to enjoy a special and productive affiliation with the CMP. And we remain grateful for the cooperation that their staff extends to us. Without that cooperation, this tour would never have been possible. So, a big thank you to the teams in Anniston and Talladega for allowing us to bring you this virtual backstage tour. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope we get to see you again in 2021. On behalf of the Garand Collectors Association, I'm Marty Morgan, and thank you for watching. The Garand Collectors Association was created to exchange information and expand knowledge of the U.S. rifle caliber 30 M1, to preserve and publicize history of the rifle and its inventor, John C. Garand, to assist and encourage new collectors, to assist authors in writing new reference works, to assist members in their collecting, and to encourage competitive and recreational safe shooting of the rifle. GCA membership is inexpensive and brings useful benefits. Members receive the GCA Journal, a publication that presents invaluable technical and historical information about the M1 rifle. Membership also qualifies you to make purchases through the Civilian Marksmanship Program. To apply, simply visit thegca.org, where you can find a membership application form. You can even join online. It's well worth the low cost to join a community of people who collect and shoot the greatest battle implement ever devised.